Okay, welcome. Welcome to our Weber County Board of Commissioner meetings, 5:45 on Tuesday in the evening. It's our public hearing for our budget, but we're going to do our regular consent items and our business first. So welcome here. We'll start off with a invocation by Jason Hodge, and then we'll have a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Ebert, and then myself will give the thought of the day. So Jason? Right there.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for the time that we have to come here together to assemble. Lord, we thank you for the privilege to free government that we have in America going back many years, that we have the ability to elect our own leaders, and that we live and dwell as free men in this land. Now, God, I pray that you will give wisdom to these folks who have gathered here together, consider the matters of the county and the expenditures and the way that the money of our people will be spent. You have said in your word that we have not because we ask not, so we ask that you will give us wisdom and help us to be wise with the matters that are before us and remember the principles that are laid out in Scripture, that indebtedness is not a virtue, Lord, and that we ought to pay as we go if we can, and Lord, that honesty and integrity are very important in the leaders of our people. Now, Lord, we know that you give us the government that we deserve, and we pray that our people would also be just and equitable and use right judgment and a just balance, and that we would please you, and that therefore the conducting of the business of government would also please you. Now we pray that you'll bless this meeting tonight and bless these folks as they give input into the matters of our government and to the money. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jason. That was very appropriate for budget.
The audience, please rise. Repeat the pledge of allegiance after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just before we get started here real quick, you'll notice outside the doors here, I'm going to get confused here. I think it was made in Canada and it's going back to Canada, or it was made down here, it's on its way to Canada. Not sure. It's a new bus. They brought it here to look at. They're going to take it down tomorrow to the UTA. We have our annual budget meeting for the UTA tomorrow also. It's a totally electric bus, and you need to go out. It'll only be here till 6, so you could go out between now and then you'd miss all the neat stuff we got going on here before the public hearing. But you could go out and look at that because it's kind of really cool. So it's a no emissions. It can go for about 120 miles. The electric charger above it, they pull into stations, and it can charge in, I think he told me 6 minutes, can get really fully charged and ready to go again. So it's amazing technology. We're at the UTA trying to put together some grants to come up with a few of these. So it's a great thing. It's great for our environment. And so we're really excited about that. So anyway, there you go. Our consent items. I'll go through the consent items. Number 1, request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $135,921.33. Request for approval of warrants 326855 to 327033 in the amount of $1,021,765.34. Number 3, request for approval of minutes for the meeting held on November 10th, 2015. Number 4, request for approval of a stipulation quick claim deed, it says D, but I think it means deed, an easement agreement by and between Weber County and J. Craig Peary and Peary, Ogden Canyon Trust, J. Craig Peary, trustee. Number 5, request for approval to set the first public hearing date for December 1st, 2015 at 10 o'clock a.m. to consider potential projects for which funding may be applied for under the CDBG program in 2016 for 2016. Request for approval to set the date of December 1st, 2015 at 10 a.m. for a public hearing to consider and take action on a proposal to amend the following section of the Weber County Land Use Code. General Provisions, Title 101. Definitions, Section 1 to 7. Subdivisions, Title 106. General Provisions, Chapter 1. Standards, Title 108. Hillside Development Review Procedures and Standards, Chapter 14, and other sections of the Weber County Code to provide for administrative edits related to changes in the subdivision code and related to changes to the names of the planning commissions and the planning areas. Number 7, request for approval of an estoppel certification for Summit Mountain Holding Group, LLC. Number 8, request for final approval of Phase 2 of the Ridge Townhomes at Wolf Creek, PRUD 8, units at approximately 3500 North Moose Hollow Drive, including a financial guarantee for subdivision improvements in the amount of $377,600. This approval also includes the County Survey Monumentation Improvement Agreement. Number 9, request for approval of granting easements from Weber County to Stonefield Inc. for ingress and egress across parcel 10-040-004. Wow, that's our consent items, Commissioner Eber. Ricky.
Okay, so this week we had 10 purchase orders for the amount of
Here,
130.
1 second, Ricky.
Yep.
So Commissioner Gibson is with us in spirit, so he's on the phone. Commissioner Gibson?
I'm here.
Thank you. So he's here. Go ahead, Ricky. Sorry
Great.
about that.
Yep, no problem. So 10 purchase orders this week for $136,000. 77% of that amount, or $105,000, was for our IT department for software maintenance. 13%, or $18,000, went to the strike force, and this was for software and computer equipment. And 8%, or $11,000, went to the library for HVAC filters. As far as checks, we wrote 179 checks this week for $1 million. 39%, or $396,000 of that is for the landfill for transportation costs. 18%, or $182,000, went to for the gun range for ballistic baffles. 12%, or $123,000, is for the transportation development, and this was primarily for the 4400 South project in Riverdale. 8%, or $86,000, went to the library construction for computers and network equipment, and 7%, or $74,000, went to the library for books and audiobooks.
Commissioner, what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the consent items as read.
I second it. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Wow. Number F, action items. Number 1, request for approval of Weber County Board of Canvass 2015 election. The presenter is Ryan Kelly. Ryan, come on up.
All right, so Shelley just gave you a sheet that has the results for the Proposition 1, the transportation tax. The other cities are meeting to canvass. One of them met last week, and then the other ones either met yesterday or they're meeting tonight as well. The results are that it did pass with 56.7% of the vote. Against it was 43.3%. Also, there's a sheet that breaks down a little bit more of the dynamic. As you know, this was the first year that we've done really vote by mail, other than the library bond that was done in 2013. And it really takes a lot of people to do an election, whether it's a traditional election or whether it's by mail. And so I just wanted, first of all, to say thank you to those people that helped us out. The poll workers did a tremendous job, and our staff really did a great job. Shelley's here with me. Daniel, Stu, Trina, and the many volunteers and workers that it takes to pull it off really did a great job on it. You'll notice that about 90% of the people that voted in this election chose to return their ballot by mail, which was significant. Only about 10% chose to go in person. Turnout countywide was about 37%, which was pretty significant. One thing that was really neat about this election is Far West had chose to do a traditional election. So that day, voters needed to go to their polling place to vote, and it really gave us a good sample of data. And their turnout came in at about 23 or 24%, right in there. Cities that chose not to even, or not chose, but they didn't have an election this year, they came in at about 35%. So there's a significant increase between the city that chose not to do by mail as opposed to the city that did. And vote by mail, we don't really necessarily look at turnout, even though that does have an impact. But it's the value of getting that ballot in front of a voter, letting them make an informed decision, and then being able to cast that. But it was neat to see that many people participate in with it. A couple of things just of note. We had a power outage in Hooper for about 3 hours on Election Day. So that makes it fun when we're voting on the electronic machines. But we did have a plan in place. We were able to get a generator there rather quickly, and you would hardly even know that there was a power outage going on. The poll workers did a great job handling that. A couple of other things that I wanted to point out is our undeliverable mail rate was at about 4.5%, and I had expected just under 10%. So that was a phenomenal job. Daniel in our office and Shelley and Stu did a great job of working the voting list, trying to update and correct mailing addresses. And that's important because we want to get people their ballot to the correct address. So a 4.5% return rate on that was, I think, very exceptional. Another thing, in the primary election, on election night, we were able to include about 65% of the ballots that we'd received in the results that night. So there was about 35% that weren't included on election night. In this election, we streamlined our processes and found some new efficiencies as we get into this, and we were able to count about 96% of the ballots that we received. And most of those were received late in the day on election day and the day after. So that was a significant jump, and that's important that we get as close to as many ballots as we can counted and included that night. Just a couple of other things really quickly. You'll notice down there that there were 554 ballots that were received in our office that we weren't able to count. Just over 200 of those were returned after the deadline. They do have to be postmarked the day before the election, or they could have been dropped off. So those came in after the deadline. There was about 300 that had a signature issue. So either the signature didn't match the signature that we had on file, or we didn't have a signature on file, or the voter just failed to sign that affidavit. With every one of those voters, they were sent a letter, and if they gave us their phone number or email, or we had that on file, they also personally received a phone call giving them the opportunity to correct that. In total, we had about 1,300 that we pulled out of the flow because of signature issues. Only about 300 of those were not able to be counted in the end. So we really went out of our way to try to get that corrected and remedied. Daniel in our office had the great ideas. We were looking, some of the signatures that we have on file are just too blurry, or there just isn't a signature on file. And as he got looking, he's like, you know what, these people have voted in the past. So if we've got a vote history, they had to sign a book somewhere. And so he went back and he pulled poll books from previous years, and we went and found those voter signatures, compared it to the ballot, and there was a significant number that we were able to find that way. So we really left no stone unturned in order to get to that point. That's something that I wish we could do a little bit better at, but I'm not sure what else we could do, where we try calling them, emailing them, going to previous poll books. We really do utilize all the resources that we have at our disposal. We did use 17 polling locations this time and 68 poll workers, and that was down from 40 polling places and over 200 poll workers from last year. So the vote by mail does save there, but it does, create a little bit more work in our office, which is fine, and we were able to handle that. And, as we're going into this, I think we're able to find some great efficiencies, and it's been a really positive experience for us this year.
People in any of the polling locations in long lines on election day?
No, no lines at all.
Do you think you'll make a change even next time and have less polling locations? Did some have very little turnout actual at the polling location?
Yeah, Uinta had 29 voters turn out. Harrisville had 74. Ogden City, between the 3 polling places, I believe had like 636 voters, something like that, which easily could have been accommodated in one polling place. So those are the things that we're definitely looking at. You know, we wanted to start slow and give people a lot of options, and we always want to have options so that if a voter doesn't get a ballot in the mail, if there's an issue with the post office or they need to correct their registration, things like that, we want to make those convenient. But that is something we are definitely looking at for next year, is seeing where we can consolidate.
What about the early voting? We offered that too, right?
No.
We didn't do any of that, so
No.
they couldn't vote early. Okay,
They couldn't vote early because they got a ballot
They got a ballot.
in the
Okay.
mail, so.
great.
So real quickly, my only concern again was that reason for not counting, and we looked at those numbers, and it sounds like you were very proactive in addressing that as they came in and trying to find resolution for it. The only suggestion, of course, I would have, which Ricky's probably already touched on, is that just education.
Yeah,
This is a new process for many, and so we need to educate them that the signature is pretty important. But yeah, thank you, great job. We had an elections official that left, and we had no idea how we were going to replace that wonderful employee. Wow. So we appreciate the great work you put in, and you far exceeded your responsibilities or expectations, so thank you for the great work.
thank you. She did a great job, and we've got a great
We got a great
staff.
staff.
It takes
That's
a
great.
lot of people to really put it together, so
Great.
thank you.
Take a motion.
Okay. Is there any number? I'll make a motion that we approve the Weber County Board of Canvas 2015 election.
I second it. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. There's 3 ayes. Okay, thank you.
All right, we
Appreciate
do
it.
have some more copies of the sheets that we have, and we'll just set them on the back table,
Okay.
so if anybody's
Thank you.
interested.
You might want to give one to Kathy McKittrick right there, so she won't have to go back and find one. Number 2, request for approval of right-of-way contract by and between Weber County and the following for the Skyline Project. Rory Youngberg, parcel 6, he's my neighbor, I know that. And it's not Jared Anderson at the microphone.
Unfortunately, you got stuck with me tonight, but good
Meyer
evening,
Hoffer.
Commissioners. Yeah, this is a similar contract to the ones you've seen here recently on the 3500 West project, and
Nope, it's not
12th
the
Street, so
3500.
it's not. It's just similar
Oh,
to those
okay, similar,
same contracts. Yep. This one is between Rory Youngberg and Weber County for
Skyline.
the Skyline project, though.
Okay.
So, just asking for your approval of this contract. So,
We're not making it that easy on you.
oh.
Go ahead.
We have a number.
395.
I'll make a motion that we approve contract 395 by and between Weber County and Rory Youngberg, parcel 6 for the Skyline Drive project.
I second it. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Thanks for coming out.
Thanks, Commissioners. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll go to item G at 6 o'clock. It's the public hearing. Request for a motion to adjourn the public meeting and convene the public hearing.
So moved.
Second, do we need a roll call on this? All in favor say aye.
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 Number 2, public hearing to take input on the proposed interfund loan between the Transportation Development Fund and the Public Works Fund for the purpose of completing capital projects. Come on up, Scott.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. So what you have before you is an interfund loan resolution. So we have a significant amount of money sitting in our Transportation Development Fund right now, and we have plans to spend that money, and these projects are going to take several years before we can actually get them constructed and actually expend these funds. In the meantime, this money sits in the bank with the state treasurer or with John Bond and some other investments that earn between 0.5% and 1% interest. So they're really not earning much in the way of interest.
Wow. That's how you sound.
All right.
We've got
Kathy.
lots of visitors here from other places.
Yes, we do. Okay. So our capital projects fund, we actually have the opportunity to continue to work on some of these flood control projects and finish that project we have out in west. And as part of that, we need some additional cash to do that. We could spend down our fund balance, but then we're going to get to a point where we're so low on our fund balance that if there is any other emergency that pops up, we won't be in a good position to handle it. We could go out to an outside bank and borrow the money and pay a lot higher interest rate, but the solution in this case would be to borrow that money internally, so basically borrow it from ourselves. What we're going to do is pay a rate that is specified in state code. It's going to be higher than what the interest rate the Transportation Development Fund is currently earning, but cheaper than what we would have to pay on the open market. The benefit of that as well is we get to keep the interest. So the interest goes into our Transportation Development Fund. It's going to help us further transportation projects down the road as we continue to get more money. So it's going to be repaid over 10 years. We're going to fund it with our money that's currently being earmarked for a stormwater project. So we have the money to be able to fund this going forward. And I think it's a good solution all the way around to preserve our strong cash balances and earn a little bit more interest in our Transportation Development Fund. So unless you have any specific questions that I could answer, we'd I guess go to comment.
I'm pretty familiar with it, so we've been talking about it for quite a few months, so I don't know if anyone has it. I think maybe we'll get the opening of the tentative budget, then we'll let the comment happen on both of them, or if there's somebody that wants to comment on that right now, we'll do it. Okay, seeing none?
So I would just say really quickly, I mean, it's just, I don't know, for those of you who actually pay attention to the prayer, which I do, it was interesting that that we actually today requested by Mr. Hodge that we be very fiscally responsible and understanding that debt is not a positive, it's a negative. So any opportunity we have to manage that debt responsibility we should take. And as we looked at our options for this particular project, this was probably the most responsible that we could find to move that forward. So I appreciate the work that you put into this this process, I should say. So thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on now to the highlight of the evening, the 2016 budget. And as we start this, I just want to show this slide. I don't know if you can see up there on your screens in front of you. Commissioner Gibson, you received an email with these slides, so you can follow along if you'd like. So this first slide is showing the employment by industry of Weber County, and it's a very busy chart. It's got a lot of little pieces of the pie in there. And what I want to show is that's a good thing, that we have such a diverse economy in Weber County. There's no one industry that's making up a huge portion of our economic base. We're not a commuter community for Salt Lake. We have diverse industries right here in Weber County. And what that does is it allows us to diversify our risk, and we have a very stable tax base. So I want to show you, though, what's been happening in our new property growth over the last few years. You can see in 2007, 2008, we had fairly robust growth. And then we had the market downturn, the Great Recession, and you see that our growth plummeted, just down to 1%. It rebounded just a teeny bit in 2012, and it really hasn't been that great since. We don't have the final numbers for 2015 yet, but we're expecting it to come in right around the 2013, so 1.5%, maybe 1.75%. We don't expect robust growth in 2016 as well. In fact, we don't expect it in 2017. Things are starting to turn around slowly, but we're not expecting 6% growth like we used to have. So we just need to keep that in mind as we go forward. We have conservative revenue projections. If the economy turns around and growth starts to explode, that's a very good thing, but we're not going to budget for that. We're going to wait till that actually happens before we start budgeting for that. Another source of our revenue is our sales tax. If you look at this, this is actually a good thing. Our sales tax has been increasing about 4% each year over the last several years. It's good that we're getting that new growth. The only caution with sales tax is that it is very volatile. If the economy has a downturn, our sales tax numbers just plummet. So while it's good that we're getting good growth, much better than we are in our real property value, it's kind of a scary source to count on. So with that, let's just jump in straight into the budget. So general fund revenues for the year, we're expecting about $70.2 million. You can see the largest portion of that, about 40%, is going to come from property taxes. About 33% comes from charges for services, and 15% is coming from sales tax, and you have a few other smaller and significant areas around there. Of that $70.2 million, we plan or have budgeted to spend $69.7 million. And as you look at this chart, this shows how we plan to spend that money by function. Public safety takes up about 52 cents of every dollar that we spend. That is on the sheriff, that's on jail-related equipment, and some of those other related departments. The next biggest pot of expenditures that we have is the general government. That's our assessor's office, our clerk auditor office, our treasurer's office, the commission, just basically those departments that run the general county government. And then you can see parks and recreation and public facilities. That would include the conference center, the Golden Spike Event Center, our various parks, Weber Memorial Park, the North Fork Park, etc. That comes out of that 11%. I want to show this, though, a little bit differently. So this is general fund expenditures by type. So not by function of government, but by what we're actually spending the money on. And what I want to point out here, if you look at that chart, you see salaries and wages is 44% and benefits is 27%. So over 71 cents of every dollar that we spend in this county is on employee compensation. When I presented the tentative budget a couple of weeks ago, we were kind of short on time, but I mentioned briefly healthcare and the cost of healthcare and what that's been doing over the last few years. I wanted to just highlight that again. If you can see on this chart, 2010 we were spending just under $6 million on healthcare. In 2016, we're budgeted to spend almost $9 million. We've gone up 40% since 2010. Now, our county is one of the few counties that continues to pay 100% of the premium for health insurance, and we pay that for every employee, even if that employee's spouse is already covered under somebody else's insurance. The county offers a couple of other benefits that are going to become quite expensive here in the next few years. One is sick leave. So for those employees that were hired before 2008, the county will pay out their entire sick leave balance when they retire, a third in cash when they actually walk out the door, and 2/3 we stick into a bank for them that they can then draw over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So we're acting as their bank for 20 plus years. Commission was proactive and they capped this for employees coming in after 2008 to 600 hours. So we've addressed this liability going forward, but we've made this big promise that now it's coming time to actually start paying for the promise that we made in years and decades previous. Just to kind of give you an idea of what that is, as of the end of 2014, if I shut down all sick leave and just paid out everybody's balance, it would have cost me just under $6 million. That's going to continue to grow as these employees who started before 2008 continue to earn leave and continue to save it for retirement. So it's going to grow for the next 10 to 15 years before we finally start having a lot of those employees leave and retire, and then we'll kind of crest that hill and that number will start to come down. But it's going to be a significant cash expenditure in the next few years. The other big one is our other post-employment benefits. Now, we offer for those employees who started before 2008, 5 years of paid health insurance when they retire with the county. This liability is really significant. It's going to cost us so far about $20 million is the estimated liability that our actuaries are telling us as of the end of 2014. We've capped this for those employees who started after 2008, but we still have to pay for everybody who's going to retire. Just to give you this in terms of cash flow, this coming year, 2016, we're going to spend over $700,000 to pay for these insurance benefits. In 2020, so 5 years down the road, we're going to be paying over $1.2 million per year. And it continues to grow every year for about the next 10 to 15 years when we're going to crest that hill as more and more employees start to retire, and it'll eventually come down. So the reason why I'm telling you this, we've already taken steps to address this and to prevent new employees from being dumped into that bucket. But we still have to pay for all these employees where we've already made this promise. And that's going to be a significant drain on our cash flow as we go forward. One of the issues that we are having right now in several departments as well is we're having a hard time attracting people to our positions because we offer our cash benefit that we're offering people is not as high as some of our counties around us, but our benefit package is very high. So when you compare the two together, we have a fairly competitive compensation package, but the breakout between cash and benefits isn't as well balanced as we need to be in this market. So you have people who come in and look and see a $12 or $13 an hour starting salary, and they're making $16 right now. So they're forgetting that they are paying for their own health insurance and they have to save their own money for their 401k. So they're not looking at our benefits that would make it more comparable. They're just having a hard time even being interested in the county to get to that step to look and investigate our benefits. And I think that's because the breakout of our compensation between cash and benefit right now is a little skewed. I think there's a lot of younger employees now that would rather have cash as opposed to a benefit. It's kind of a generational thing. I suppose I'm the same way. I would rather receive cash today than I would a benefit or some promise in the future. What that means, though, is we continue to pay out these benefits, and it continues to eat up a portion of our cash. I want to show you what that's going to do to our fund balance over the next 5 years. So here's a 5-year projection. You can see our revenues in blue and our expenditures in red. Now, this assumes that we don't change anything. And if we didn't change anything, we would see our expenditures rise at a rate faster than our revenues, and we would basically either have to start spending down our fund balance or we would have to raise taxes. Let me show you what this means with our fund balance. So that red line, 16.7%, is our minimum floor for our fund balance. That assures that we maintain our AAA bond rating, and it gives us a lot of flexibility in case we have another disaster, a flood, or anything like that. We have plenty of money in the bank to respond to those disasters. If we don't change anything, we're going to fall below that minimum threshold by the end of 2018. Now, as I point this out, I want to just pause for a second and shift gears and talk about our bond rating agencies. So Standard & Poor's just finished a review of the county. As always, we've received a high bond rating. As you look at this chart, we're one of the few counties in the nation that has AAA bond ratings for both our GO bonds and our sales tax bonds. Some of the things they cite in their report when they look at Weber County is that we have strong management with good financial practices, strong budgetary flexibility, and also a strong debt and contingent liability profile. They just issued a press release just a month or so ago, and I caught onto this paragraph right here that I really like. It says, the county has consistently demonstrated its ability to offset any general fund revenue volatility on the expenditure side. So that's accountant speak. If I translate it into English, it means the county lives within its means. So I don't expect that we're actually going to spend down our fund balance and go below. We're going to make adjustments. The reason why we have this forecast is so that we can see these things before they get here, so that we can react. This commission in particular, other commissions in the past have done a good job at doing that. We've invested in new technologies. We are investing currently in an accounting system that's going to help us achieve some efficiencies. We had that early retirement window a year ago that's actually helped us manage our employee salary and wages expenses. So I'm confident that we're going to be able to address these issues going forward. I'm not predicting that we're going to fall under that fund balance and have to raise taxes. I'm just saying if we need to make some changes, we need to look at how we compensate employees, and we need to figure out if there's other things we can do in the county to become more efficient, to better use those tax dollars we have. Okay, we're going to leave the general fund and we're going to go to our special revenue funds. Now, this is our library fund, our municipal services fund, our health fund, our transportation development fund, and a few other smaller funds. Primary source is still property tax, although sales tax plays a much bigger portion in our special revenue funds. These funds have a dedicated revenue source. So while the commission has influence over how that money's spent, the money's designed and earmarked to come in specifically for these special projects or these special entities. So this is how we're going to spend that money. You notice we brought in $40.6 million of revenue and we're spending $70.8 million. So $30 million more than we're pulling in. That's intentional. We built up a lot of money in our transportation development fund, and we're finally getting to some of these transportation projects, and it's spending down that fund balance. It's exactly what we planned for. It's nothing to worry about here. You can see that the largest portion of this, over 53%, is going to our street and public improvements. So just to kind of bullet point out what we're going to spend some of that money on, $38 million is going to go to transportation projects. $12 million is going to go for the construction of the library facilities. We already issued the bond. We have the money in the bank. We're just constructing those facilities now. And about $1.2 million is going to replace fleet vehicles. This is our municipal services fund and our forecast over the next 5 years. The municipal services fund is the unincorporated area and acts kind of like the city of the unincorporated Weber counties. We just passed a transportation tax. That transportation tax is going to significantly increase our ability to complete various transportation projects and maintenance projects, and it's going to allow us to maintain a healthy balance in our municipal services fund. Here's the library 5-year forecast. Now, looks like they're spending their money really fast, and they are. They have 2 new libraries coming online. Well, I should say 1 new library coming online and 1 renovation. They've built up a fund balance over the last few years with the intention of spending that to help equip these new libraries. And once these libraries come online, the existing tax rate should be sufficient to cover their current level of services. So as long as we don't put in a new library, they're going to be able to maintain that promise they made back in 2013 to not have to raise taxes in order to keep those libraries going. This is our health fund. Health fund over the next 5 years, we're having a big spend down in 2016. That's to finish the second floor of the health annex building. They have that money in their fund balance. And then you can see we kind of skim along close to that red line. Federal grants and state grants drive a significant portion of the revenues and the expenditures of the health fund. We do have some discretionary funds in there, and any significant changes to the amount of discretionary funds that they get, that will affect our ability to comply with unfunded state and federal mandates, which we get. But as long as we keep monitoring that, I think we're going to be okay with our health fund. I don't think that within the next 5 years we're going to have to raise taxes unless we decide to do something significantly different with how we compensate employees. Okay, on to our enterprise funds. Now these are funds that are designed to operate like a business. They're designed to cover their costs. We doing all right? Yes. Okay. We have 3 enterprise funds. We have the animal shelter, we have the landfill gas recovery, and the transfer station. The animal shelter, we're budgeted within $676. We always come in under budget. That's great. I'm not worried about that one at all. Landfill gas recovery shows that we're going to spend $60,000 more than we take in. Again, I'm not overly concerned about that. A large portion of those expenses are in depreciation expense, which means it's a paper expense. It's not cash going out the door. Our transfer station, however, is budgeted to spend over $400,000 more than they pull in. We're continuing to work with the transfer station to try to get those expenditures down and see if there's any way we can generate more revenue. But currently they're going to spend down $414,000 of their fund balance. Okay, so to kind of summarize everything, I threw in a chart that shows by function countywide government, all funds stuck together. You can see about 26% of the total county dollar expenditures are going to go towards streets and public improvements. About 22% is going to go to public safety, and then you can see the various other amounts here. If I split that out by function, you'll see about 35% of total county dollars is going to employee compensation, 28% is going to other operating expenses, and about 31% are going to capital projects and public works, primarily transportation projects. So with that, unless you have any other further specific questions, we anticipate passing the final budget in on December 22nd. And so then I would just turn it over to you for any public comment. If there are any questions or anybody wants additional information, here's my contact information up there, or feel free to just call the clerk auditor's office and we'll help them the best we can.
So I want to make one comment, and then we'll see if Commissioner Ebert does, and then we'll turn over to public comment.
Or Commissioner Gibson.
Or Commissioner Gibson, that's right, he's here. One thing we did not put in this budget is we've not put a COLA or merits in for our employees. And if I recall, we didn't do that last year either, or the year before we didn't, and we waited and did it later to see where we were revenue-wise.
Last year, so this current year, 2015, we did give a
We did put it
2%
in.
COLA and
Correct.
a merit increase.
Okay, correct, the first year. So our plan is to look and see where we are, where our revenues. We're very conservative on our revenues. We're conservative. This is a very conservative budget. And comes later on this summer, early fall, we're going to sit down and look at that. I know I've had a lot of employees ask me questions. We definitely feel like we will look at it and see where we stand, so.
Well, just a couple quick comments. The first issue we have is we know from studying the market specific to our employees, where whatever office or department they work in, that there's a concern that they're not at market levels. It makes retention and hiring, attracting extremely difficult. We're lucky here in the county that we have dedicated employees that are weathering the storm with us right now, and we appreciate their dedication to that. So it is something that we are concerned about. But in government, we spend, what we can't overspend. And so as Commissioner Bell was pointed out, that we'll reevaluate that, and our fingers crossed, our revenue estimates will be a little lower than what they actually end up being, moving that forward. I just wanted to make a couple quick comments that we are aware of the benefit model, and we are doing some modeling to find out how we can best address our benefits and the rising costs, and we are looking at that, and it's a discussion that we've had. None of these items that you have brought up we're not aware of, and I know you're bringing them up for the general public, but we're addressing each and every one of them. The transfer station, we are aware of the issues and concerns we have with the loss there, and we are looking at the transfer station. We are again aware of the health department and that spend down, and where that line will drive into operations, and of course we'll adjust that when we get to a point where that affects the mission of the health department. And so our eyes are very focused on getting that fund balance to a level that's appropriate, but doesn't spend into operations and spend into the mission of the health department. And again, into any of these other areas, we're very aware of it, and we're very fiscally responsible. There's not a bunch of fat. There's not in all these lines and graphs and pie charts, there's not a big area between what we're bringing in and what we're spending. We're very aware to keep those numbers where they need to be and provide the services that are essential and that are needed, but not allow our departments or offices to grow to a point where our tax rates aren't where they're supposed to be. So I hope that that's what was presented to you. I hope that you feel very comfortable in the money that's being spent by this commission, but also that the mission is being accomplished from our perspective of providing those services. So thank you very much.
I will say, accountants by their nature are conservative, and so we try to keep revenues low, and we always point out things that are bad on the horizon, not things that are good. So I don't want this to be taken that there aren't a lot of strengths and positives, and that's why I tried to mention the bond ratings. The county does very well. These charts are if we don't do anything, we always do something.
Yep.
And so I just wanted to, compliment the commission for addressing these issues. And again, we point these out. We've discussed them privately before. We've discussed them in our budget meetings. Commission's aware of them, and this is more just for the public to be aware that this is the trends and this is what we're going to have to do in the future to address it.
And before, I don't know if Commissioner Gibson has something, but really quickly, the last pie chart really, I think, showed something that this commission is really dedicated to, and is that 31% of this budget is for projects, ongoing infrastructure projects, and helping drive this county and keep the infrastructure new and working efficiently, and not allowing that to become a drain on future commissions or on future taxpayers. Maintenance is extremely important, but also driving for economic development, infrastructure that attracts businesses, which has helped us with our new growth long term. So I hope that you realize that this commission is working forward, has some forward thinking. When we started, Commissioner Gibson would talk many times about stay tuned for all the things that are changing, will continue to change. We have a lot of projects right now, and there's a purpose of those projects, and it's for long-term growth and stability to provide this community with at least some indicators of future growth, because again, what we're looking for is to create, our quality of life indicators and have them create prosperity. So, but I just want to point that out. Thank you.
Commissioner Gibson,
Yes, sir, I'm here.
we would love to hear from you if you would like to say something.
I think the only thing I would say is that regarding your statement about the employees, I want to express our gratitude to them and make sure that they understand that we'll do everything we can, but they need to be aware of the issues that we're dealing with, especially with the increased health insurance premiums. That's one of the things that's really kind of killing us. The Obamacare health insurance increases have really made it very hard for our budget to handle, and so we've got to figure out a plan forward in the future years as to how we're going to deal with that. So that's my only statement for now.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to open this up to the public. This is the public, where the public can make comments, any concerns, anything they want to talk about. The microphone is yours. State your name. Come on up.
My name is Jan Vollmer. I live at 3741 Red Hawk Circle in Eden. I'm retired. However, I was in the healthcare industry all my profession, either from an IT perspective or from third-party billing. And healthcare costs, especially for insurance premiums, have far exceeded the cost of living. Knowing what many companies did to negotiate healthcare contracts with insurance companies, and I'm just providing this as input, what they found out is that they would rather cut back on paying for the gold or the platinum policies for their employees and rather increase the salaries. and have an extra pocket of money for merit increases and awards based on performance. That bought companies far more than paying for premium healthcare policies. The other thing I would like to ask the commission and perhaps the gentleman here, but if you're paying 100% of the healthcare premiums for your employees, are you going to be penalized because it's considered a Cadillac plan by the Affordable Care Act?
Scott, did you have an answer to that question by chance yet?
Brad D is actually working on that right now, and he's aware of the Cadillac plans. I believe our plan is still currently grandfathered, but we are aware of the Cadillac tax, and so we are taking steps to address that.
Thank you.
So ACA is something that we are very aware of. We kind of balanced exactly what you're talking about, a feeling that you would rather have money in your pocket to spend however you would like, and then pay out of pocket if you need to. It becomes your decision. We balance that with an understanding that the benefits that are offered are not taxed. And so where $1 goes to benefits, 60 cents goes into pocket. And at what point do we weigh that where it's more important to give them that 60 cents or 70 cents as opposed to the $1? And it is a balance. And we're walking that line, and those will be decisions that we'll continue to look at over this next year on seeing, in what works the best for the staff and for the employees. But we're aware of it, and it's on the horizon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. Public hearing, come on up. Okay, let's start a line down there, and everybody get behind each other.
Bring the microphones to you if you want.
Okay. Request for a motion to adjourn the public hearing and reconvene the public meeting.
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Number 5, action on the public hearing. Request for approval of a resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County facilitating the loaning of funds from the Transportation Development Fund to the Weber County Capital Project Fund. Probably has a number on that, doesn't it? A resolution number? 45. Resolution number 45. What's your pleasure, Commissioner?
I'll make a motion that we approve and adopt Resolution 45 between the Weber County Commission to facilitate the loaning of funds from the Transportation Development Fund to the Weber County Capital Projects Fund. And I stumbled with that because we're making a motion between ourselves. So between Weber County and Weber County. That's my
Okay,
motion.
I second the motion between Weber County and Weber County. Any more discussion on that? It's going to be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye. We can probably ask one more person.
Sorry. Commissioner Gibson?
Aye, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. G3 on the public, there's no action. This was just our public hearing. So we'll go to H, public comment. We've had public comment, but there's a time again for public to comment if they'd like. Going once. Well, we'll put a line. We'll line up if we need to. Okay, we're not going to have any more public comment then. So we'll close that. We'll go to I, assignment of the Pledge of Allegiance and thought of the day for Tuesday, November 24, 10 a.m. We'll be back here at 10. We won't be late at night next Tuesday. So thought of the day probably would be Commissioner... Oh, Shelley will decide the thought of the day because apparently we don't do order well. Pledge allegiance. Do we have a Pledge allegiance volunteer? Yes, Fatima. Thank you. Now we're going to go to J.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn for the
I
evening.
second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner G. Oh, thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.
I'm going to hang up on you, Carrie. Bye.
Thank you, bye.